Ok. Boa tarde a todas e todos. Estamos aqui agora ao vivo na nossa programação, aqui no StreamYard, no nosso evento, Conversas sobre Linguagens, Culturas e Identidades, que é promovido pelo Programa de Pós-Graduação em Letras da Universidade Federal do Paraná. Quero dizer para vocês que é uma felicidade estar aqui com todas e todos vocês, né? E que hoje nós temos uma fala intitulada Multilingual Identities of a Refugee Student. É um prazer ter todas e todos vocês aqui, e é um prazer para mim estar organizando esse momento, esse evento aqui. Eu quero iniciar agradecendo as convidadas que estão aqui conosco, já vocês vão vê-las, né? A professora Chatwara Suwanamai Duran, ela pode me corrigir depois, se eu tiver errado. A estudante e professora também, Caroline Rodrigues, e a estudante e professora também, Mariana Lira, por estarem aqui com a gente nesse evento. Eu quero agradecer também bastante a professora Clarissa Jordão, que está aqui conosco também, ali in the background, e que está me ajudando aqui a organizar toda a live, a organizar tudo que a gente está fazendo aqui agora nesse momento. Então, muito obrigado pela presença de todas e todos vocês. Eu vou começar falando em português agora, né? Isso é parte de um evento maior, né? Um evento que está sendo organizado pela nossa linha de pesquisa, como eu já falei. O evento, vocês têm a programação dele aqui, nesse link que está aí embaixo, e o link também está nos comentários, na descrição desse vídeo, também está o link, e está o link para a lista de presença. A lista de presença pode ser encontrada nesse link aqui, mas como eu falei, os dois estão aí na descrição do vídeo. Se vocês não der tempo de copiar, vocês podem ir lá na descrição do vídeo e ver. Mas eu só vou abrir a lista de presença um pouquinho depois, quando começar o debate com as professoras e estudantes, a Caroline Rodrigues e Mariana Lira, tá bom? Então, eu vou começar falando um pouquinho em português, só dizendo que, como eu falei, estou muito feliz com toda a organização do evento, com todo o evento, e por que surgiu a ideia desse convite para a professora Chatwara Duran? Porque a gente tem visto que, apesar de migração ser uma coisa não nova para a gente aqui no Brasil, uma coisa que sempre existiu, somos um país de pessoas migrantes, né? Somos um país constituído por pessoas migrantes. A gente tem visto uma realidade de migração de pessoas em status de refúgio, né? Cada vez maior nos anos mais recentes. E a gente tem visto vários e várias alunas nossas buscando estudar esses assuntos e conversando conosco, professoras e professores, para estudar esses assuntos. Diante disso, a gente está procurando aprender cada vez mais sobre isso, a gente está aprendendo junto com essas alunas e esses alunos sobre esses assuntos. Além disso, as universidades, a nossa Universidade Federal do Paraná, tem criado diversos programas e diversas formas de apoiar essas populações dentro da universidade, como, por exemplo, o PBMIH, aqui na Universidade Federal do Paraná, e diversas outras iniciativas em universidades diversas ao redor do Brasil. Em vista disso, a professora Chatwara Duran foi minha colega de doutorado, né, quando eu era doutorando na Arizona State University, e naquele momento ela estava estudando, a sua tese era sobre populações migrantes em status de refúgio nos Estados Unidos, né? E ela continua com essa pesquisa, ela tem publicado bastante sobre esse assunto, tem se dedicado bastante a esse assunto, e por isso eu pensei em convidá-la para a gente ter uma conversa sobre, para aprender juntos e juntas sobre esses status e essas pessoas, e como trabalhar com essas pessoas em diferentes contextos, né? Para a gente saber um pouquinho da pesquisa dela, para a Mariana e para a Caroline falar um pouquinho também sobre o que elas estão fazendo e conversar um pouquinho com a professora Duran. A professora vai falar, ela vai dar ela vai falar por mais ou menos uns 20, 25 minutos sobre uma das pesquisas dela e como essa pesquisa tem se expandido, né, com relação a populações refugiadas nos Estados Unidos, e depois as professoras e alunas Mariana e Carol vão arguí-la com relação a essa apresentação. E também vão falar sobre suas realidades, suas pesquisas, né? Essa arguição vai ser não somente com relação à apresentação, mas também a um paper que elas leram, que é a base dessa apresentação também. Então, para a gente ter um pouco mais de materiais para a gente conversar. Quem tiver interessado depois no paper, manda um e-mail para mim, eu posso colocar meu e-mail aqui depois, eu posso passar esse paper para vocês. Acho que algumas pessoas já têm, outras pessoas não, tá bom? A gente vai mudar para inglês, isso é a última coisa que eu vou falar em português agora. Eu expliquei um pouquinho da live, mas agora a gente vai mudar para inglês, porque a professora, a convidada, ela fala apenas a língua que ela tem em comum conosco, é inglês, né? Ela é originalmente da Tailândia, ela é professora na Universidade de Houston, e ela está aqui com a gente agora, e a nossa língua que a gente tem em comum, né, a nossa, em comum entre aspas, porque a gente sabe que a gente não compartilha, né, línguas dessa forma tão completa como se imagina, mas é o inglês, então a gente vai mudar para inglês agora. So switching back to English now, right? So I'm just going to repeat briefly what I said in Portuguese right now, but in a brief version, I think, right? Because we've talked about this a little bit before, but I just want to say thank you so much again to you, Professor Chatwara Duran, who we kindly call Uish as friends, right?
Yes.
Also say thank you so much to Caroline Rodrigues and also to Mariana Lira, right, for accepting the invitation. And just to explain that, Professor Duran will spend about 20 to 25 minutes presenting on some of her research. And she will be presenting especially on a paper that she wrote, but also on the expansion of this paper and how this paper has expanded to other research. And then the girls, Mariana Lira and Caroline Rodrigues, will be asking her questions about her presentation, but also talking about their own research here in Brazil with refugee populations here as well. Before we move on, I just want to briefly introduce the three of you, right? Very briefly. And please do correct me, all three of you, if I make any mistakes, but I did go to your professional profiles to say this, right? And I know all three of you, so, but do correct me if I'm wrong. So Professor Chatwara Suanamai Duran is an associate professor of English at the University of Houston in Houston, Texas. She has a PhD from Arizona State University in Curriculum and Instruction and Language and Literacy. She has an MA at the University of Texas at San Antonio in Bicultural and Bilingual Studies with a concentration in teaching ESL. And she has a BA in English from, and correct my pronunciation, please, Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok, Thailand. And correct me if I'm wrong, Uwe, please, right? Her research focuses on multilingualism, transnationalism, literacy studies, language teaching and learning, and identity. She's the author of a book entitled Language and Literacy in Refugee Families by Palgrave Macmillan that was released in 2017. And it is an honor to have her here. She was a colleague of mine when I was a PhD student at Arizona State University. Caroline Rodrigues is a doctoral student in linguistics at the Federal University of Santa Catarina, and she holds a master's degree in Letras from the Federal University of Paraná. It was a great pleasure to be her advisor, and I know that she's going to different lands and different types of research, and it's great to see her develop as a student. She's part of a research group in educational linguistics and post-coloniality, and she also is a teacher, a volunteer teacher in our humanitarian migration program here at UFPR. Mariana Lira is a master's student in linguistics and letras, right? In language studies with emphasis in languages, cultures, and identities, teaching and learning here at Universidade Federal do Paraná, where she also got her undergraduate degree, right? She is a professor, she's a teacher as well at Programa Brasileiro para Migração Humanitária, the humanitarian migration program here at UFPR. And she is a great student, and it's great to see her develop as well. And she is Clarissa Jordão's advisee, so it's great to have all of you here. I've talked too much already. I thought I was going to spend 2 minutes, but I think I've spent 10 already. But I'm going to get to the background, which is where I belong, right? And I'm going to start with Professor Chatwara Duran, who we gently and kindly call Uwi, and give her the word now. So Uwi, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. So thank you so much for inviting me to give a lecture and to have a discussion with you all. And thank you for the team being friendly and supportive. So as Eduardo said, I'm going to present some of my research and then how I expanding it for the further research to the further direction. I'm going to share my screen from my computer, which is a PowerPoint. So I hope you could see it. All right. So for the talk and discussion today is titled Multilingual Identities of a Refugee Student. It's based on a larger research that I've done for many years. Then this is just a focus on one student. However, I will also give some background from the larger research as well. So agenda for today, I'm going to discuss on multilingualism and identities, what it means to be multilingual, how and why languages are not equal, and how we use language ideologies to approach these subject matters. And I'm going to discuss on how transnational individual or a transnational individual make meaning of their identities based on the fact that they are multilingual as well as belonging to a variety of communities, or basically they are transnational individuals belonging to multiple transnational communities. And I'm going to also discuss my future direction that I going to use in my current and future research based on the expansion of this paper that I'm going to present. So first, as I said, the first one, what is multilingualism? It has been with me since a very young age, and I try to define what multilingualism means or bilingualism means, because I grew up in bicultural bilingual family as well. I was Chinese Thai in Thailand, but then later on, I also learned multiple other languages. And when I went to grad school, I also found that lots of scholars out there researching and try to define what it means to be multilingual as well. So what I found that their individual level and societal level that interconnected and go hand in hand when one person is becoming or being a multilingual or bilingual person. From individual level, there are terms that I like to use, multilingual repertoires. One person might know 5 languages, but all these languages doesn't have to gain equal level of knowledge. You know what I mean? I know, for example, Thai and I know English, but and I also know some German. But my German level of proficiency might not be equal as my English proficiency, but I still have some concepts, some cultural knowledge, or some word or expression that I know in German. So this at individual level, and individual could have also multiple dialects knowledge. So one person may know standard English, right, dialect, and then know something like non-standard or that they use in their home or community. So one person can be multi-dialectal as well. Or a Thai person knows standard Thai and also know a northern dialect in Thailand. And also societal level that go hand in hand with individual. In a city, the nation, if that city had linguistic diversity, of course, it would be a little more easy and simple for individuals in that community to become bilingual and multilingual. So for this paper or this research, term to consider here as I put in my agenda, why we use, why languages are not equal, and going to the root of the reason or the rationale or the factor that we might think that languages are not equal. Actually, in linguistically, all languages and dialects are equal. What is not equal is going back to language ideology or beliefs, opinion, thought, attitudes, feelings about language that we might put into that language. For example, you might have a feeling like, oh, language A, let's say French or Portuguese, is sound beautiful and romantic, right? So that kind of like attitude and value you put into it. So that's a type of language ideology. And ideology here is social cultural, social political, constructed and social historically constructed based on, maybe history, based on race, based on ethnicity, that that language is used among or in those communities. So we make up and grow up with the ideology created by both our immediate community and larger community. Me, for example, when I was growing up, my mom and my grandma would say, oh, don't use those bad words, right? So those bad words, why are those bad words? It's a belief system that some words are bad and some words are good, right? Some words are polite and some words are impolite. So this
Is the connection broken? Or is it just me? No, it's everyone, right? Okay, so let me see if she can come back. Wait. We'll be right back, everyone. Right back. Okay, in the meantime, let me see if I can contact her. We have just started. Let me see if I can contact her because her connection has dropped. I just sent her a message to see if she's coming back because her connection's dropped. Well, technology is problematic. But let's see. She did not get the message, so I imagine she's still out. Let me send her an email. Oh no. Yeah, I imagine that too, Clarissa. I just saw your comment. I just sent her a Facebook message and also an email. Let me send her an email as well to see if she can come connect back again. Para as pessoas que estão chegando agora, que eu estou vendo que está aumentando o número, a nossa convidada teve um problema ela acabou de cair agora, mas eu acho que ela deve estar de volta daqui a um pouquinho tempo. A mensagem que eu mandei para ela chegou lá, então imagino que o problema de internet que ela pode estar tendo já tenha voltado. Vamos ver, vamos ver. Oh, I can play the guitar? No, no, no way. I could, but no way. Let me do this.
Já que a nossa apresentação vai ser em inglês, né? Talvez a gente pudesse usar esse tempo para se apresentar em português. O que você acha, Mari?
Acho ótimo. Pode ser, Carol. Vai lá, Carolina.
Podemos começar com as pessoas da UFPR, olha só.
Vai lá, Mariana, pode ser?
Quer que eu comece? Tá bom. Então, eu sou a Mariana, eu sou estudante de mestrado aqui da UFPR e minha pesquisa é dentro do PBMI, né, do projeto de extensão aqui da universidade, que é o Português Brasileiro para a Migração Humanitária. E a minha pesquisa é sobre prática colaborativa entre docentes, então eu trabalho junto com um professor que é sírio brasileiro, que foi ex-aluno desse mesmo projeto e agora volta como professor, junto comigo. Então, eu faço análises, né? Penso em relação à prática colaborativa, tendo uma perspectiva decolonial. Acho que é basicamente isso, minha pesquisa. Agora você.
Olá, boa tarde, colegas. Eu sou a Carol. Atualmente, eu sou aluna do doutorado em Linguística na Federal de Santa Catarina e estudo migração e contextos linguisticamente e culturalmente complexos. Durante o meu mestrado na Universidade Federal do Paraná, fui orientanda do professor Eduardo, e foi uma experiência muito interessante investigar, na minha pesquisa de mestrado, as identidades migrantes dentro da própria universidade. Então, desenvolvi um estudo com alunos migrantes refugiados, graduandos da Universidade Federal do Paraná, e discuti algumas questões de linguagem, de raça, de concepção de língua, e isso me deu um gás para esse doutorado, para o qual eu planejei uma pesquisa investigando migração, refúgio, mas agora na educação básica. Eu sou professora de educação básica, então essa paixão é muito nossa, né? Atualmente, eu desenvolvo minha pesquisa de doutorado, que é uma pesquisa etnográfica na educação básica, na Secretaria Municipal de Educação de uma cidade aqui na região metropolitana de Curitiba. Então, eu acompanho essa matrícula e esse acolhimento de crianças nas séries iniciais do ensino fundamental, e como a escola se configura como esse lugar linguisticamente complexo, culturalmente complexo, e essas relações entre alunos brasileiros, alunos migrantes, professores brasileiros e as orientações pedagógicas nesse contexto. Meu maior interesse é discutir políticas linguísticas e ideologia de língua nessas relações sociais. Pensando em relações sociais, por isso eu escolhi a abordagem etnográfica. E como o professor Eduardo mencionou, eu também sou professora de português voluntária no projeto PBMI da UFPR. Então, educação, linguagem, cultura, tem tudo a ver comigo, e é um prazer estar aqui com vocês, discutindo, repensando essas questões. Muito obrigada pelo convite.
Eu agradeço a todo mundo que ainda está esperando, né? Porque a gente está esperando aqui um pouquinho para a live começar, a recomeçar, a dizer que é, de novo, um grande prazer ter tanto a Mariana quanto a Caroline aqui, porque elas estão fazendo pesquisas bastante relevantes, elas têm feito coisas fascinantes, na verdade, né? E assim, que, como eu já falei, foi um prazer orientar a Caroline, e é um prazer ver o trabalho da Mariana crescendo tanto e se tornando algo tão importante. Talvez a gente pudesse, eu sei que vocês já falaram um pouquinho sobre as pesquisas de vocês, né? E que vocês já tiveram essa oportunidade agora em português, mas talvez a gente pudesse pensar em eu posso pensar em alguns questionamentos que eu tenho ainda para vocês. Eu sei que com a Mari eu conversei com ela agora faz 2 semanas que eu tive na banca de qualificação dela, né, Mariana? E o que eu queria te perguntar é o seguinte, como é que a Mariana, ela está trabalhando, e o que é muito legal do trabalho dela, ela está trabalhando com uma pessoa que é professor nesse programa de português para migrantes aqui na UFPR, mas que também é uma pessoa que teve status de refúgio e que tem que passou por esse mesmo programa como estudante, né? Então, se você pudesse falar um pouquinho sobre como está sendo essa dinâmica, Mário, eu agradeço.
Sim, na verdade, ele especificamente, ele é filho de brasileiros, na verdade, de uma brasileira, a mãe dele. Ele vem de uma migração dos anos 50, de sírios para o Brasil. Também, aí, né, a história toda de libaneses e sírios vindo para o Brasil é antiga. E aí, a mãe dele retorna, eu nem sei se ele está na live, ele disse que estaria aqui. Mas a mãe dele retorna, então, para a Síria, e aí, mais recentemente, em 2016, né, depois, devido à guerra e por causa da situação de estudos mesmo, ele gostaria de vir aqui estudar, lá na Síria não era possível, então ele veio para o Brasil, mais com o status de brasileiro, né, não como status de refugiado, embora ele compartilhe várias dos traços, várias questões, né, com esse público do próprio PBMI. Ele é enxergado pelos outros como um estrangeiro, como um sírio, né, e além de tudo árabe, muçulmano. Então tem esses outros, né, essas outras questões que ficam nítidas, que vão para além de uma mera nacionalidade. E foi muito incrível, foi muito forte esse trabalho, foi muito importante para mim, para eu repensar, né, sobre a minha relação com esses refugiados, esses migrantes dentro desse programa. Foi muito interessante, ele contribuiu muito também, foi espaço também que ele pôde colocar, e ele relatou isso, né, que ele poderia, então, colocar a sua voz, falar com o que ele pensa, o que ele enxerga sobre a situação que ele se encontra. Então, foi muito bacana. Eu continuo ainda analisando os dados, pensando e me questionando e mudando de ideia, porque eu acho que essa é a prática, né, e de pesquisa, é um constante questionamento, mas foi muito bacana.
E o que você tem aprendido mais com essa pessoa sendo uma pessoa que está fazendo parceria com você no teu ensino para outras pessoas migrantes?
Eu acho que eu aprendi muito a tentar enxergar esse outro lado, né? A gente chega muitas vezes com uma ideia muito forte sobre o que são eles, o que essas pessoas querem aprender, ou como se deve dar esse processo de educação. E com ele eu tive que repensar muito isso. A gente criava nossas aulas juntos, então a gente tinha certos embates em relação aos temas que a gente ia propor na nossa aula, em relação ao que ele achava que era importante para aqueles alunos, o que eu achava que era importante, em relação ao que os próprios alunos traziam para a gente. Então, a prática colaborativa não é sempre uma prática assim de tranquilidade, ela também tem seus conflitos, né? E tem suas situações que fazem com que a gente reflita e traga outras perspectivas. Então, tenho aprendido a pensar, a me comunicar com o outro, a deixar essas minhas certezas de lado, né?
Ô, Mari, você podia falar um pouquinho sobre a questão do expert, que você já tinha falado. Você tinha falado que uma coisa que aconteceu essa ideia de quem tem o expertise na coisa do ensino foi uma coisa que você questionou também. Você pode falar um pouquinho sobre isso?
Ah, sim. São várias coisas, né? Essa é uma das coisas que surgiram na minha pesquisa, mas que os alunos muitas vezes preferiam, eu mesmo sendo uma falante nativa de português, tendo minha graduação e todos os meus papéis que comprovavam, né, teoricamente, a minha capacidade de estar ali como professora, e ele sendo um professor iniciante, muitas vezes os próprios alunos preferiam e se voltavam a ele nas nossas aulas. Então, eu acabava ficando um pouco de lado mesmo. Isso foi muito interessante para mim, porque os alunos encontravam muitas semelhanças em relação à figura dele. Ele também falava o árabe, ele também tinha passado por esse processo, né, de deslocamento, de enfrentamento de uma nova cultura. Então, isso aconteceu constantemente. A gente acha muitas vezes que, né, por eu ser uma falante nativa, os alunos vão querer necessariamente ter aula comigo especificamente, e isso não acontecia. Então, ele era muito mais chamado pelos alunos do que eu, em várias situações. Os alunos falavam, não, prefiro o outro professor, quero que ele me explique, que vai ser mais tranquilo para eu entender, porque ele compartilha certas, né, a língua, e culturalmente ele compartilha mais do que eu compartilhava.
Que legal. Então, essa
Mari, eu
questão
tenho uma pergunta para você. Posso?
Vai, por favor.
Nossa, gente, eu não estava preparada para tantas perguntas, mas vamos lá.
Então, eu achei bastante interessante essa sua pesquisa colaborativa, né? Essa dupla, esses dois professores em sala de aula, e eu queria saber como essa experiência deslocou certas certezas ou pode contribuir de alguma forma para você como professora. Agora você, quando prepara suas aulas, quando pensa nos seus alunos, o que essa experiência te trouxe? O que essa experiência adicionou à sua formação como docente?
Adicionou em várias medidas, né? Como eu falei, algumas certezas foram deslocadas. Além disso, o meu olhar em relação a esses sujeitos, né, que eu estava dando aula, a questão do falante nativo mesmo, que às vezes eu também sou formada em letras em inglês, e eu achava que tinha essa situação do falante nativo como alguém, né, muito importante acima de todos, que os alunos iam querer ter aula com esse sujeito, e na verdade não, né? Muitas vezes os alunos querem essas identificações. E, enfim, fez com que eu tentasse enxergar um pouco mais, fez com que eu tentasse enxergar também a situação dos sírios no Brasil, a situação pelo qual eles passaram. Então, acho isso algo bastante importante, assim, que eu consegui ter mais relação e entender um pouco mais quem são essas pessoas, porque, inclusive, na minha sala de aula, a maior parte dos alunos eram sírios também, de base com sírios, ou de outras nacionalidades árabes também, que compartilhavam certas identificações com esse professor. Não sei se me fiz clara.
Obrigada, Mari. Muito legal conversar com você sobre a sua pesquisa, porque nós éramos vizinhas de porta no último semestre, né? A sala da Mari era bem ao lado da minha, no PBMI. Muito bacana trocar essas experiências, assim. Obrigada, viu? Eu achei a sua pesquisa muito interessante, é algo que a gente pode conversar muito sobre como olhar para o outro, né? essa outridade que precisa ser bastante questionada. Obrigada pela sua pesquisa, pelo interesse nessa área, por divulgar com a gente.
Obrigado, Mari. Carol, você pode falar, então, enquanto a gente ainda está esperando um pouquinho, sobre como que foi a tua transição, porque, assim, aqui você estudou algo que era relativamente novo, que ainda é relativamente novo, que é o programa do reingresso, né? E aí você podia falar um pouquinho sobre esse programa, sobre teus resultados, e, de repente, falar um pouquinho também sobre como é que está sendo essa transição de você sair daqui e ir para a UFSC, como é que está acontecendo tudo isso, por favor.
Então, eu sempre me interessei por esses contextos multilingües, e durante o mestrado, eu tive a oportunidade de me aproximar desse projeto incrível da UFPR, que é o reingresso. Esse programa de reingresso, ele faz parte das políticas de acolhimento a estudantes migrantes, né? Atualmente, na UFPR, nós contamos com o vestibular para migrantes, que pessoas de diferentes países podem se inscrever e prestar esse vestibular. O reingresso, a diferença é que os alunos aprovados no reingresso, eles já cursavam a graduação em seus países de origem. Então, os alunos entram por avaliação documental. Eles abre-se um edital e os alunos se inscrevem, trazem documentos comprovando algum documento, né, ligando à universidade, comprovando que eles estavam matriculados, e o ingresso é por matriz curricular, então, seria o mesmo curso, caso haja vaga, ou um curso com uma grade muito semelhante. E o que eu achei mais interessante no meu trabalho é, assim, pensar como esses alunos que já cursavam a graduação em outro país chegam ao Brasil e têm sua matrícula realizada na graduação, e como eles são vistos dentro da universidade. Eu não foquei nesse trabalho, eu não foquei no ensino de línguas ou no ensino de conceitos técnicos dos seus cursos de graduação, mas sim nas relações sociais diante do direito à educação. Eu estou na escola, né, a minha pesquisa é em contexto educacional, mas o meu foco não é em ensino, e sim no direito à educação a esses sujeitos migrantes. E no mestrado foi muito interessante pensar a partir dos relatos desses alunos, né? O mestrado é uma pesquisa muito curta, então eu não tive tempo hábil para ir até os diferentes campos da universidade e estar com esses alunos nas aulas. Foram 5 participantes e eu acompanhei essa turma, eu acompanhei em uma disciplina que eles estavam matriculados obrigatoriamente, que é uma disciplina de língua portuguesa para fins acadêmicos. Eu acompanhava esses alunos nessa disciplina, ouvindo relatos sobre como era a vida lá em seu curso de graduação. Graduação em Geografia, Veterinária, Engenharia Civil e Ciências Biológicas. E foi muito interessante comparar esses relatos, né, e trazer como esse aluno é compreendido na universidade. E eu não sei qual era a pergunta exatamente, professor, o que exatamente você gostaria que eu discutisse? Pensando em questão de identidade, de direito à língua, como que a gente pode falar?
Seus resultados mesmo, Carol, mas pensando nos resultados, pode ser com relação à identidade, já que o tema da gente aqui hoje é identidade, mas também como foi que você fez essa transição de investigar esse espaço para o espaço que você está olhando agora no teu doutorado?
Tá. Em relação aos dados, foi possível perceber que mesmo esses alunos já tendo experiência na graduação, no ensino superior em outro país, eles eram percebidos como limitados em questão muito técnica acadêmica, né, desse letramento acadêmico. Quem é esse aluno? O que ele consegue fazer? Será que ele consegue apresentar um trabalho? Então, eu pude perceber, a partir desses relatos, e também de conversas com colegas brasileiros que compartilhavam a turma com esses alunos em seus cursos específicos, que a identidade de aluno multilingüe, essa identidade translingüe, não era exatamente legitimada dentro da academia. Era vista como algo, uma deficiência ou como uma limitação acadêmica, tendo em vista que esses estudantes precisavam apresentar coisas em português. Mas nenhum deles era matriculado no curso de letras. Então, nenhum dos cursos se relacionava com questões linguísticas. Eram cursos de exatas e biológicas, mas a questão da língua era muito marcada durante as aulas. Ao finalizar o mestrado e problematizar essas identidades multilingües nesse espaço de ensino superior, eu senti falta, sim, de ter acompanhado mais de perto, de desenvolver uma pesquisa etnográfica, de estar com eles e compreender as relações sociais dentro daquele contexto. Porque o mestrado é uma pesquisa relativamente curta, como mencionei, então eu precisei focar nas narrativas, nos relatos que eles me traziam da sala de aula. E por isso eu propus para o doutorado estar com os alunos, estar na escola e compreender como essas relações acontecem no chão da sala de aula. Eu escolhi a educação básica, fui para a educação básica por uma necessidade que eu ouvi, assim, né, das pessoas que acolhem crianças migrantes. Eu tenho contato com algumas pessoas aqui na região metropolitana, né, pessoas que orientam professores e dão assessoria às escolas, e uma dessas colegas pediu, assim, a universidade não está desenvolvendo nenhum projeto? A gente gostaria muito, né, de ter alguma orientação. E aí, ir para a escola foi uma resposta a essa necessidade de debater esse acolhimento, né, das pessoas na escola, e um anseio meu, porque eu me senti muito limitada, né? Como eu vou falar desse acolhimento do migrante na sala de aula se eu não estou na sala de aula? Por isso eu escolhi a abordagem etnográfica de pesquisa, para me dar essa compreensão do contexto, conseguir compreender as pessoas e as relações, as políticas de língua e as ideologias que se formam ali no contexto em que essas pessoas convivem. E está sendo bastante interessante discutir com a escola, não ensinar a escola, né? Nós da universidade não estamos nesse papel, mas compreender com a escola essas contingências do acolhimento ao migrante e pensar novas possibilidades a partir das discussões que nós pensamos no chão da sala de aula.
Coisa interessante para discutir. Eu sei que agora a nossa convidada voltou, né? Ui, welcome back.
I don't know when I got cut off.
You got cut off in this, I think it was the slide when you were presenting about language ideologies. You got cut off.
Oh my God, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, it was, yeah. I was trying to contact you. If you can share your slides again, we can start, no we can get back, right?
Yeah.
And thank you so much. Muito obrigado a todo mundo por terem esperado. Thank you so much, Ui, for coming back. And thank you everyone for waiting. While you were away, Mariana and Caroline were talking a little bit about their research in Portuguese, right? Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know when I got cut off. I'm like, oh, maybe the internet.
Can you share your slides again, please?
Yes, sure.
If you get cut off again, I'll send you a Facebook message again.
Yeah, I will have it ready.
All right.
Yeah, I will get it ready.
So you're sharing your screen again, right? Okay.
Yeah. You got it? You see my screen now?
We do. Yes.
Over here?
Yes, it's right there. Yeah.
Okay. So, language ideology, yeah? I'm so sorry.
Yes, that was it.
So here, language ideology, like create language hierarchy. This is when I discuss why we have language hierarchy and why we value one language as opposed to the other, right? So it's fundamental rooted in social system, might be race, ethnic group, history. And we can explore language ideology by questioning, observing, and approaching language policy, doctrine of correctness, and linguistic and literacy practices. For example, we can look at what this standard American English is used in school, and that lead to people think about other that is not standard as substandard or not correct or unacceptable. I also use Lippy Green a lot, and her book, English with an Accent, I use also in my class. And similar to Woodlock, but she comes from the school of deficit versus different, that multiple dialects, they are just different, right? And nothing is inferior or superior. And so my approach from those references and definition of multilingualism, I believe that multilingualism is an asset to an individual and a community. So we are either multilingual or multidialectal. We might know the standard form of a language, and we may know regional forms or community form of a language, and we might know multiple other languages. So we all are either multilingual or multidialectal. I also informed by Bourdieu notion of capital that is constructed through accumulated history of an agent or group of agents. And capital here, from Bourdieu, I define it as agency, resources, and strength of that person. I'm also informed by funds of knowledge to refer to the historical, accumulated, and culturally developed bodies of language and skills essential for household or individual functioning and well-being. And we accumulated these literacy knowledge over time, right? Since a very young age, we might learn some expression in a certain dialect or language, and we learn cultural norms in a situation where we meet some people, in a situation where we have an event. So these are accumulated over time. And we also bring with us these repertoires or funds of knowledge across space. Like if you move, these funds of knowledge move with you, and it could be expanded even more. And I use the term multilingual repertoires here as accumulated linguistic resources collected over time and across space. Two other key terms, apart from language ideology, that I use in my study is first identity or identities. A person could have multiple identities, depending on context, who you're talking with, their role, your role, your job, your career. And with this identity term, I use post-structuralist perspective, which means that identities are ongoing, identity are in process and always changing and evolving. Traditionally, and I still think that it's still in use, that there's identity as fixed, which is being. When it's fixed, for example, I was born in Thailand, right? And I had these biological parents. It's always fixed. I cannot go back 30, 40 years ago to change it, right? So it's fixed. But then who am I becoming is always changing, depending on language that I learn, knowledge I learn, the domain I use language and knowledge, the new people I know. If I change job, I also have different identities and roles. Another term that is big, and I also use a lot in my research, is transnationalism, which means having linguistic, social, cultural, and economic tie with two or more social spaces, territories, or nation. And a person or individual is transnational when he or she is belonging to here and also there. For example, I belong to the US. I can practice multiple things just like Americans do. And I also belong to the Thai community in Thailand, right? So it's a simultaneity between here and there. I also define transnationalism as the flow of people, communities, culture, and ideas across cultural boundaries. For example, here in Houston, we have a lot of Thai restaurants. We also have Thai temple. So when people move, they move with them their food, their culture, their community, their cultural products, right? Which means that they also have ties with the country they just moved from. Now go to my research that I've spent time a lot of many years with the refugee from Burma. So the research context based on multi-year ethnography and interview. Refugee family that I work with, they're from the Karenni state of Burma. So the Karenni state is right here. People might have heard Karen more, but the Karenni state of Kaya is also a little bit to the north of Karen state. They were in refugee camp along the Thailand-Burma border for more than 15 years before moving to Arizona, the United States. And many children were born in the refugee camp. They have already multilingualism. As minority Thai group in their homeland in Burma, that had more than 140 ethnic groups, they learn their language, their ethnic language, to maintain and preserve their cultural identity and use among their group. But then they also need to learn Burmese, which is the official language of Burma, for school and legal system. And they need other ethnic languages for trade and communication across groups as well. So multilingualism had been constructed since they were in their homeland. Here in the United States, there are more than 100,000 refugees from Burma. And the number is decreasing though, because Burma or Myanmar is a little more open nowadays, and and fewer and fewer refugees are there in the refugee camp, and they also move to other countries as well, such as Finland, Sweden, Australia, Canada, and other countries. So these refugees were required or are required to acquire English as quickly as possible, while the children or the school-age children need to go to school and adults need to get a job. They are required to become self-sufficient within a few months, but all of them or most of them living below the poverty line, because usually they work at an entry-level job. For example, cleaning dishes, housekeeping at a hotel, and things like that. A big family, their condition is that a big family living in 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. One family that I worked with, for example, family of 5, and the mother of the family is also pregnant, and they live in 1 bedroom apartment. So 5 or 6 people in 1 bedroom apartment. And although refugees are extremely resourceful, as I said, that they know multiple languages already, and my thinking based on lots of research and reading literatures about refugees, they are extremely resourceful, right? They have survived wars, they have survived persecution, they have survived multiple borders. So they're very strong, resilient, and resourceful. But their linguistic funds of knowledge are repetitively marginalized here in the United States. So findings from the larger study that language ideologies among refugee families have been constructed historically, socioculturally, and politically across time and space. And refugees are transnational agents. They bring with them their resources, commodities, cultures, ideas. Their multilingual practices present their accumulated transnational identities here. So this is from the larger research, and then I'm going to give an example of one student to give more details of multilingual identities that he has. So let me introduce you to Tere. When I knew him, he's 33 years old, father of 3, and he was struggle to find a job in the US. And he said it was because he know only little English, right? So using language ideology lens here, language here is a site of struggles. So he said that I speak Burmese, Karenni, Shan, and Thai, 4 languages, but none of those are valid here. So with lots of frustration that couldn't find a job, he complained, he blamed that these languages didn't help him. But then later on, after a few months of living in the United States, he started to see or realize that his linguistic resources could be useful. He worked first as a part-time language broker and interpreter, and later on, he got more job to be an interpreter. But he started to think about how to be a language broker, interpreter after some friends or some service providers, doctor and nurses at the hospital asked him to be interpreter. He started to have hope, and he said, I don't want to work as a dishwasher. I want to do things with languages. Adding English to his linguistic repertoire, he found that he could work as a translator. He said, I like translation job because I can help my people and I also learn more languages, because more and more refugee friends asked him to interpret, to translate letters, to go with them to the hospital or to the medical clinic. And then he explained, I use my language, which is Karenni and Burmese, and I translate English to Karenni or English to Burmese. So he explained a little bit about what he does. Later on, when his refugee friends start to see that Tere had added some English to his repertoire, they asked him to be their ESL tutor. I follow him and observe his class, and I found that he used a lot of metalinguistic knowledge and cultural knowledge between here and there, US and Burma or Thailand, to explain more detail to his refugee students and refugee friends. One, he taught them about the word for color, right? He showed the color pink with like a paper cut with a pink on the paper, and he showed them multiple times and said, this is pink, this is pink, this is pink. And I wonder why. And he explained to me there's no pink in Karenni, because the word me in Karenni cover pink and red. So pink is not just a new word, but pink is a new concept that they have to, the refugee from the Karenni state, or those who know Karenni language, have to be able to differentiate between pink and red, not the same color, but 2 different colors. So this is why his refugee friends asked him to be ESL tutor, because he could explain things in detail. Later on, he also became a proud individual. One, he knows English in addition to other 4 languages. He said, now I can speak 5 languages. My native language, my first language is Karenni, my second language is Burmese, my third language is Shan or Thai Yai. Number 4 is Thai, number 5 English. I can write 3 languages, Karenni, Burmese, and English. And he became a more happy person. He explained to me that he said to his client that, and I quote here, I speak 5 languages, and he said, congratulations. Wow, he said, congratulations to me, that's good. And as I say, he became a more happy person when he know that he can use these linguistic resources as his income. Then I also say that this is language as resource using language ideology perspective. For him and a lot of refugee families that I work with, they still transnational individual, and they feel that the United States is not final or permanent destination. They still think that they can go back to Thailand or they go back to Burma or Myanmar. And being multilingual secure their present and future. So there is word here. I'm in the US now, MBC, but sometime I want to go back to Thailand. So for these transnational individuals, to be multilingual is to secure their present and future, because they will be open to anything, right? Any place that they will be in the future. So implication here from the research for the local practices and service providers, we should encourage or encouraging multilingualism is the way to go when you have linguistically diverse community. Interpreter and translator job is very crucial and vital, and we should, try to create training program for these multilingual individuals as an option or alternative. For pedagogy, and this has been in the field of applied linguistics, right, to value, to utilize multilingual strategies and linguistic funds of knowledge that students bring with them. Not just that, we need to also understand transnational students' experiences and their plan. As you could see here, sometimes they think about their past, and sometimes they are here and there is some multilinguality. And these transnational students may have different plans than from the local students. So we could also use the lens of multilingual practices to explore students and different groups of people as practices of performing identities. Now, expanding from that research, I also look at narrative inquiry, telling stories, and the power of storytelling. As you can see that in multiple slides, I just show quotes from the participants. So I want to utilize the narrative inquiry even more in the near future and in my current practice. Because based on ethnography that I use, or the foundation of research method that I use, ethnography, we already have a lot of foundation or the strengths here that narrative inquiry could be used and utilized. The stories come from deep hanging out, which is anthropological method, immersing oneself in a social cultural group to receive insight and experiences. And researchers become observing participants, and that's already there in ethnography. We also use interviews as qualitative research in ethnography, and we receive or gain individual life history and oral histories. And we gain more stories even more through group interview and guided conversation. And we could also use autoethnographies from participants to gain the stories. So as you could see, ethnography already had these fundamental features, and going to narrative inquiry would empower their stories even more. And why narrative inquiry here? Traditional linear model has limitation, I think, and also other scholars have published about narrative inquiry as well. And traditionally, ethnographers or researchers present and represent participants, and they have authority. Now, if we switch or change a little bit of our role, right, to be less authoritative, we can present something like nonlinear narrative. We researchers as co-tellers, not the whole author, right, but co-teller. compose, interpret, and construct a narrative logic, help narrate or narrating, more making sense with the stories with the participant. I also see my researcher role as an advocate for my participant, and if they could, we could present their voice, I think that's an empowering method. I also trying to use this method with ethnography and narrative inquiry to do in Houston with immigrants and refugees, especially among Thai immigrants here in Houston, because we have a big Thai community here. And that is my presentation.
Thank you very much, Professor.
And so sorry, and thank you for understanding.
No problems. It happens. Technology. So first of all, we would like to thank you very much for your presentation and for bringing such an important topic to our discussion. I confess that I didn't know much about the struggles of the Karenni people, and I think these stories need to be told, and your research is very important. So now we are going to ask you some questions, okay, related to what we thought, reading your text. Carol, do you want to be the first?
All right. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to hear from you, from your experience, from your work as a researcher. And I also developed an ethnographic study here with refugees. And I would like to ask you, how can this ethnographic approach help us teachers and understand language ideologies and identities in multilingual contexts, especially in multilingual schools?
That's a big question. Yes.
Sorry.
No problem. No problem. We can start with something very easy, and students don't feel uncomfortable. We can ask them to write journal. I put in the narrative inquiry, I put autoethnography, right? And I usually do with my student, we call it heritage language project. So they could write or do research within their family. They could ask their parents about language they use, right? Grandparents, great-grandparents, or whoever in their family, and they write papers to you. So at the beginning of the semester, you can ask them to do that, right? In addition to something like, oh, introduce yourself, right? Which we usually do in the classroom. You could say something like, I want to learn more about you. And then adding to like your goal of learning this class. What is your objective of taking this class? Tell me more about, your linguistic background, your cultural background, right? So they get less offensive, right? It's not like interviewing them or interrogating them. So that we can use. And teachers or other students ask me all the time, or students who are going to be teachers ask me all the time, like, oh, I have 10 languages here. How do I do it? Because I just know English, right? Or I just know Portuguese. How do I do it if I have students from, 10 different languages? It's difficult, it's challenging, it's impossible to learn 10 languages in 5 months. But at least you know a little bit, right, about their cultural background, linguistic background, maybe some greeting terms, some words, right? You learn a little bit about their cultural norm, what they do, what they mean by when they say that, or when they behave like that. Oh, this is you know, something like, oh, that's the belief or the value that we don't understand it. And if we like trying to trying to understand them, there's a term called cultural responsive teaching, right? That even though the teacher can't learn all the 10 languages, we can be multicultural.
Can I ask a follow-up
Thank you very
question?
much.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
No.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but Uwe, one thing that I noticed in this paper that you wrote and in your research as a whole is that you do research with these refugee families, not only in the educational context, but, you know, you go to their homes, you go to their you go to their jobs, and they invite you to their parties. And do you see other researchers in refugee studies doing the same kind of research, you know, playing basketball? I know that you don't play basketball, but I'm just thinking, you know, playing sports with them, or, you know, doing that kind of thing with them, you know, going to parties. Do you see that going on a lot with studies with those same types of population, or not?
I see those, especially, you know, with the community engagement or researcher who do community engagement, and they might not be researcher, they might be volunteer, but they always do that, right? And actually, we can do it and have multiple roles with our participant. I know it's tricky, like, we are researchers, but we need some ethics, right, to work with refugees or with participants. But and I don't know, is there anything like IRB in Brazil or consent form?
Yeah, IRB is committed. Yeah.
I think it depends too, right? Like how much you want or what kind of method you use. If it's ethnography, as Carol used, you are ethnographer. Of course, you do all these things. You need fieldwork, you engage, you spend time with them. But if you just like want to observe and interview, right? So you distance, right? So it depends on research method and depend on access. Depend on access. Some participant might be like, you know, but and you could see from my research and my paper that they were in Thailand before, and they were surprised that, oh, this volunteer that they got is a Thai person, and they could speak Thai to me, and they got connected right away, right? That's something as asset that I have, but it doesn't mean that others or from different ethnic group could not do it. It depends on the relationship or the rapport or the support that you create with them, right? To build trust and to gain trust.
But have you seen other researchers do the same kind of thing?
They're doing it, but maybe different levels. I see those researchers doing that too. I read some article in Georgia, in Atlanta. They have a lot of refugee students as well, and researchers they are doing it. That they volunteer and they go with the refugee family. They attend event. But again, right, different, depend on the access you have. But I think all the researchers try to be engaged in the community as much as they can. And I see researchers doing that too.
Thank you. I guess my friend Mari has a question for you now.
Yes.
Mari, are you here?
So, Professor, thinking about this context of education, how can we, for example, as Brazilian teachers, plan our classes based on the idea of cultural awareness, considering that we do not share the same cultural background with our refugee students?
How could we create cultural awareness? Yeah. This this question is similar to, well, the other day I had some other event on campus, and I got similar question like this, right? How do you do this? And I think I would have the same answer here, that you try to be more open and open-minded, right? You don't have pre-assumption. You learn who they are from the way they present to you. And okay, you see them black, you see them yellow, you see them brown. Doesn't matter, right? We don't want pre-assumption or stereotype, but we learn who they are from the way they present to you. But then after they present to you, I think nowadays Google is a good resource. It's a good resource, and I have heard lots of teachers, when they heard the word like Karani, they start Google right away. Like, oh, okay, even though there might be some misinformation, not clear information, but you get some general ideas. Or you might have like teacher parent conference. You invite them, right? Or learn more about their culture. Well, I know it's difficult right now because of COVID, that you don't have face-to-face interaction, but you can do that. You can research on Google or ask them to write about themselves.
That's a very interesting option, so we can know more about them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I found that too, that when they are asked to write their stories, and it doesn't have to be in language that you understand. They can draw. That's a term, right? Multimodality or multimodal literacy. They can draw. They can paint. They could tell you stories by drawing, even though they don't know the language you know. We can use the multimodal strategies here too.
Yes, this is very important. I think sometimes we as Brazilian teachers, sometimes we are afraid of these cultural differences, and we think we are not going to connect to these students, so it's kind of an issue for us. But it's very important what you told us. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I understand. And this is something not scientific, but they could feel it, that you care. It's difficult to measure how much you care or understand them, but they could feel it. They can see from your intention. Mm-hmm. But
Carol?
Hi. Yes, and from the study of funds of knowledge, again, I know it's difficult during COVID time, but teachers go to visit the families, right, to see the students if their time available. I know there's a lot of burden on teachers' shoulder already, but there's something that they could do, is like visit the family or bring the family to school.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a question from the audience. Fabio Bezerra asked, and I want to ask a similar question.
Okay.
He asked, in which ways notions of language, nation, and identities in our plannings and school policies can impact students. Well, I understand that those notions of language, nation, and identity are really strict in our country. Thinking about Brazil, this monolingual orientation is real at school. And I'd like to ask you, since we are talking about school, how can we as teachers can work with these notions in the documents and change our classes in a way to be cultural responsive teachers, in a way to bring our students and make them not minorities, but part of our school, part of our lessons?
Yeah, that's a good question. And actually, I would want to get example from my TESOL quarterly article, 2019, that it's not just that we talk about multiculturalism or diversity to the minoritized student, but we educate everybody about linguistic diversity and cultural diversity. So the mainstream and the minority understand the whole picture of diversity in school, right? And of course, teachers are required to put students to pass exams and tests, but you can integrate things. It depends on the subject you teach, right? You teach sociology or sociology, you can expand more about race and diversity or linguistic diversity or religious diversity. In addition to, okay, you have the curriculum, you have to teach about this, right? But you can ask students even more. So if you know that some of students are transnational students, so what happened there or how it looked like in in the country that you come from, right? And you share stories. And from a lot of research, those who tell story in class start to be proud of their stories when others listen to them. Or if you teach math, right? There's something that you need to teach, but you can ask something about, okay, you can ask students how many siblings you have, right? How many, like, it's like coordinate math and culture together, right? Or yeah, it depends on the subject. And as I say, not just empowering the minoritized students, but teaching diversity and linguistic and cultural diversity in school as a whole. It creates supportive environment and harmony, not just to the minoritized student, but also the majority of mainstream students to understand that, hey, this is the case in our school now.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's really
I hope
interesting
it's
to think. Yes, it is. Diversity is part of our school. Like it is part of schools.
And how
we can see diversity.
What the body of the student body in school in Brazil now? Like there's the local and the percentage, or you receive more and more immigrant students, and where
it depends on the context. In my school, they're from Venezuela and Haiti. But in other schools, they're from other countries. There's a friend of mine is working with some Russian students, and
wow,
as diversity is part of the school. But our documents, school policies, they are monolingual, monocultural, and this is a challenge for teachers.
Yeah. I think you could. It's difficult, or it takes years to change the curriculum, but teachers can create activities to add. Yeah.
I think one important information about our migration here in Brazil that is less than 1% of population. So it's not compared to the United States, for example, which is much more. But even being just 1%, it changes a lot. And these last years, we are receiving more and more refugees and migrants here in Brazil, from Haiti, from Venezuela, from Syria, from Congo. And it's a new area that are being formed here. And we are thinking about other things and having to research, and our context is changing. So, and unfortunately, we don't have a lot of public policies to to help and to give support to these refugees and migrants that are arriving right now.
So I will say that teachers can be researchers, right? And if you present your work, what you found in the classroom, what you found in school, and you publish it and you present it to the local and to the larger community, then they will know more and more that this is needed, right? This is required, this is needed. Just like multilingualism here in the US, you know, in the past 50 years ago, people would say, and nowadays some people would say too, that, oh, you raise children bilingually or multilingually, the children going to be confused, you know, so don't do that, right? But later on, we show more and more research that they have cognitive advancement. They gain more multiculturalism and cultural knowledge. They are more flexible when they bilingual and multilingual. And the past 10 to 20 years, bilingualism, multilingualism is now, or multilingual, bilingual schools are now flourish in the US, right? It's like you show the research, you show the findings. So I would say teachers should start present this to the public or publish what they found in to the public and also to the higher in the, you know, administration.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's a big changing, I think, because we have to change this idea, this monolingual idea that we have and schools have. But it's something that is changing with the time. I think we have to work with that.
When I did my research in Phoenix, Arizona, one school, the principal, I went to do research and then I had to ask for approval from the principal, and he like, welcome. And then he said he created an event for, you know, multicultural. 1 week he created an event for the Burmese refugees, right? The parents, the grandparents just show up, and the student dance, the student sang, thing like that. And later on, the next month, the principal said, okay, why don't we have this type of event for a different group? So if all the teachers present something like this, that, oh, I have so and so student in my class, and then show it to the principal.
Yeah.
I don't know though, like in these the grade level school, the grade level school, the young kids, are they going to school or they learn at home, the homeschool?
They go to school. During the COVID, they are at home. Yeah, right now. They are not attending classes at school, just watching.
Yeah,
but
teachers
again,
are online.
If they have internet at home, they can present something from home, right?
Yeah. That's true. Professor, I want to know more about the language brokers that you mentioned. What is the importance of language brokers to their own community, and how do speakers of the so-called minority languages who assume the role of language brokers are seen in other contexts outside their communities? Are they well received, or is there any kind of tension? Is everything okay with them in these places?
So and I had a book chapter about language broker as well. But I differentiate between interpreter and translator versus language broker, because interpreter and translator, they just translate word to word or sentence to sentence for information. Language broker had cultural knowledge of the community, so they can explain more to get the audience more information to understand. For example, in the paper, I say that, oh, this is your birthday, January 1st, 1972. Oh, this is January 1st, 1980, and I couldn't get why. Tere, who is a language blogger here for me, explained to me that, oh, they count their birth date depending on their lunar calendar year, and they don't have birth certificate. And so he could use his cultural knowledge and then explain it, not just to translate word. And this is important, especially in medical, in hospital, in things that people come with different cultural definition and cultural knowledge. For example, I have a student here, oh well, a year or two now. She did mental, she tried to add some mental awareness or mental illness or psychology or wellness to her ESL class to refugee students, right? And she had to explain it, not just that, okay, let's see who's happy, let's see who's sad and things like that. Because in some culture, mental illness or if you're not right, if you don't feel happy, if you are sad, if you have depression, it's something taboo. You should not say it. Or it's something that if you go to a psychologist, if you go to a doctor that, hey, I have depression, it's something taboo. It's something like, oh, you're crazy, right? So she had to like be a language blogger there. Or at teaching English, she also had to add cultural knowledge there that here in this culture in the US, wellness, well-being, you could tell or you can express your feeling and there's nothing wrong about it. You know what I mean? So so language blogger is really needed. In Australia, there's also a lot of research in medical field that they need language blogger.
I know that in some countries, this language broker is someone at school. They hire people from different nationalities to work as language broker for children. And I'd like to know about your context.
About my context?
Language brokers at school, are they needed? Are they there?
That's good. I don't know much about at school, but I know from my participant that at the hospital and at the medical clinic, they need language broker who not just translate word to word, but to explain cultural knowledge to the doctor and also to the patient. In school, when I was in Arizona, they have something called liaison, right? LIASON. And basically, they have to work back and forth between the families and the school. But I don't know if they would call themselves language brokers. But that's also the term cultural bloggers, right? That they might not be language broker, but they understand the cultural differences. So there's the term cultural bloggers. What do they call it in Brazil? Are they language bloggers or they are cultural bloggers?
Actually, we are thinking about bringing people to school. There isn't a name. It's just a project because of the cultural differences. How students see their teachers, how they relate to each other, how they eat their snacks. And this is something that we must discuss.
Oh.
And I really liked how you present this person as someone important to the community. And this idea is what we are thinking about developing.
Okay.
Actually, in my context, a teacher asked, we need someone to understand the kids, their habits, their needs.
They in Phoenix, Arizona, there was a project by another professor. They call it train the trainers. So they have someone from the local community, from the refugee community, who had at least intermediate level of the dominant language there, and understand the cultures of the refugee or the immigrant community. And you train these people to communicate with both school and family, and because they have knowledge of the immigrant and refugee communities already. Yeah. I think it's practical. And when we have the language broker from the local or refugee or immigrant community, the refugee and immigrant more comfortable to talk to these language and cultural brokers.
That's really interesting. And something about Tere.
Yeah.
You wrote about his confidence, like he was an English speaker, and he also speaks four other languages. And I would like to know about this confidence. He was an English broker. He was a language broker for his community using English. This recognition as a language broker, was it like some more ideological or related to his English level? Like he developed more English skills during these 2 years, or he was engaged to other contexts, and then he became this English broker in his community? How was this?
Yeah, so first he started with, because he was strong in Caribbean Burmese. First he started with translating Caribbean Burmese on the job. More and more, right? Because there are multiple layers of translation from Caribbean to Burmese, from Burmese to English. First, when he started, he couldn't do it from Caribbean to English right away. So that's another interpreter between Burmese and English. And then he learned more and more on the job that, there's a connection there. And when he saw that opportunity, he applied to get like translator interpreter program to get certificate, because when he was doing that as a part-time job, he could get like $10 or $15 an hour. But when he got certificate, he could make like $35 to $60 an hour. Like it's like a light bulb in his head that, he could add this as his job, right? But I couldn't deny that English is now important to him, because if he just know 4 languages and not advancing to English, then he can just do the Caribbean to Burmese, right? And not to English. And English added up, so there are more job for him, or people would offer him more job to translate. And later on, he get certificate, he get more confident. And this interpreter translator job, you learn as you go, right? And more experiences. Then he get more and more confident when he get more money. And you know what? He could afford a house even before me, who at the time was a graduate student. And then when I got a job as a professor, I had to save more money to afford a house. He even purchased a house through the job that he'd been, trained and accumulated to do.
This is very interesting. Crazy the way he relates himself to the languages. Thinking about this, in your opinion, does theory establish any kind of hierarchy in relation to the languages that he knows? Is there any language more valued than others? What would you say about it?
Very good question. And I always think it's very important to try to answer that. And I always get that in my classroom as well. I teach social linguistics and other classes related to applied linguistics. And I would say that, and it's in my book and my work as well, that people might think about languages as vertical hierarchy, right? Like this, right? And where one language is at the top and one is a little bit more inferior and the other one number 3 and the other one number 4. I would change that into the continuum. And you can see that in the paper that the refugees who are transnational agents, even though they added English to their repertoire, they still want to maintain all the languages they know because they know that, okay, English is important here, of course, but Karenni and Burmese also important there in Thailand and in Burma. And who knows, maybe they want to go back, right? So it's a continuum. English is used for work, for job, for language brokering, language brokering job. But Karenni is used within his ethnic group and maintain his ethnic identity. So just like me too, I think that English is important and English is a primary language for me here in the US. But it doesn't mean that Thai is inferior in any way, right? I can use Thai with my parents, my family members in the Thai community. So I would say it's a continuum. In some context, I use Thai more. In some context, I use English more, and they're both important, right? So it's a continuum here that, okay, here it had a function. Thai has a function here. English has a function here. And with his job, at the rate job at language broker, all these 5 languages have all the function in his job. So I think that even elaborate more why multilingualism is important and why we change the way we look at language at a hierarchical order to more like a vertical, that in what domain we use what dialect or what language.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes, sure.
Just
I
a
think we
follow-up.
talked about that in our classes somewhere.
We talked about it. Yes, we did. What I want to know is, I'm curious about the notion of translanguaging, if that has been very widespread within, refugee studies, or, because I did see, I looked for that in your book. I don't have the book, but I looked for it on Google. And I did see that you explore the term. How is that term explored, or how is that term? Because I know that I know that in the US, the term is very much used, but very much contested too. I know that a lot of people don't like translanguaging. A lot of people do like the term translanguaging and the concept. Like, how is that being inserted, or or not inserted, or or how is that being part of the research on refugee
I think,
populations there?
in the classroom, even more usable here now, or have a lot of application and implication in the classroom. I didn't go further much, but when people ask me, I would say that when we use the term translanguaging, or in writing or redcom, they use translingualism, right? But for me, translanguaging, that when your student asks about hierarchy of language,
Right,
the
Marianne,
hierarchy
right?
of language might come from the way we name language naming, right? And scholar like Jeb Maxwell talk about code switching, right? When we use the term code switching, we still label. We label, here is Spanish, here is English, here is Portuguese, here is English. So you recognize that they are different codes. So you use the term code switching. Why translanguaging means that you try to think about it as a holistic system. You try not to name the language. for example, if students use the word like five, mean what? Five.
Right.
And if I use the term ha, which means five, and what five in Portuguese?
Cinco.
Cinco, the same as Spanish? Okay.
Yeah.
So no matter what you say, five, cinco, or ha, the concept or the meaning is the same, which means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 entities. So no matter what students say, it means that they have the concept in the head, right? You try not to name the language, but trying to get to the idea of what makes it five.
But would you say that researchers in refugee studies are using that concept a lot, or they're more?
Not a lot, but more in the classroom setting and not in the refugee study. Still in refugee study, from what I see, and I might be behind, but in refugee study, they doing or researching with how they learn English and their literacy.
Okay.
And I try to, using multilingual literacy or transnational literacy rather than using the term translanguaging in,
Right.
in the context. We look at multilingual practices, but we don't look at how they translanguage thing.
Okay. No, and the reason I ask is because of this debate. I know it's a debate.
Yeah, I know.
Right,
That's
in
a
the US.
big
I know.
debate.
That's why I asked. But I'll get back to my background.
Oh, show up.
I think it's time to check the audience question, right?
Uh-oh.
Are there questions from the audience?
I was just going to comment on the idea of transnational identity and transnational migration too, and what you mentioned that many times these refugees, they don't want to be in the United States. They are hoping to return to Thailand. They are hoping to return to their own countries. So this is something very important that many times I emphasize when I talk to Brazilians here, that they have a misconcept on migration sometimes. And I say that they are here many times because they don't have any other options. And sometimes these same migrants or refugees, they want to go to other countries, or they want to return to their own countries when everything is calmer. So they are not going to stay here in this country all the time. This is not always the idea. Yes, not permanent.
It's very how at the time when I was doing research, when they were here, right, for the very beginning, their first years of being in the United States, of course, they had a lot of struggles, a lot of difficulties and challenges. So it would be if I could go back or I could contact them, right? Because right now they would have been here more than 5 years. They got citizenship, they afford a house, they staying here. I could have, asked them now, like, so do you think this is permanent, right? But some of them are still my friends, and I could see that they travel, and this is the reason why they got U.S. citizenship and why they want to apply for U.S. Passport. Because as a refugee, they can't travel. When they have U.S. passport, they can travel everywhere, even into the previous countries as a U.S. citizen. So it got them freedom to think about maybe this is not permanent, right? They can travel, but I don't know how they think about going back there permanently as well, because the transnationalism, as I say, it's just it here and there. And it's not just that, it's past, present, and future. It's like in connection. So if I have opportunity, I would ask them, like for me, I'm a transnational person, and I feel like at the end or when I'm retired, I can still travel back here and there. I might have 2 homes, 3 months here, 3 months there, 1 year here, 1 year there. Who knows, right? So, but this is the opportunity or what transnational individuals think about themselves because they belong to both.
You talked about the access of a transnational person to U.S. passport and some rights. Are those rights in any ways connected to their bodies?
What do you mean by that?
Can you see like differences in how those refugees are received in the country, like if they are Black or if they come from this country or that? I've been seeing a lot here in Brazil, but I would like to know about your context, because this is something like real.
It's so dependent. It's depending on each person's perspective, I would say. When I was doing research with the Caribbean refugees in Phoenix, Arizona, they felt like having refugee status, they get advantages. They could go to the doctor clinic. They could use refugee status to do here and there to get food stamp and things. But then there's some more recent refugee who just came from, Syria and other countries, and they don't want to be called refugees, or they don't want to have refugee status. They want to be accepted as a person and not a victim or survivor. Yeah. So I would say it depends on the context and it depends on a person. Some say, oh yeah, I'm a refugee, but some say, no, I'm a person, I'm an individual, and I don't want the term refugee to be applied to me. I want to have a job. I want people to see me as an able person, because sometimes in some context, in some community, refugees have some stigmatized identity attached to it, right? Oh, you're refugee, so you are needy, or you're not a full citizen, and things like that, right? So it depends. Yeah, your research is interesting. There's some data came up like that. Okay.
And my research, yes, I was working with a girl from Venezuela, and people from Venezuela and people from Haiti, and they had different experiences. This girl especially, she told me about the status of being a refugee here in Brazil. And some other people, some other Black people told me about the status is not difficult. How you are received as a Black person, that is hard. And that was interesting, like being a refugee from different points of view, and how they were seen in the university.
Oh, there's one person I know who now college student. So she's originally from Africa, right? So her parents were refugees from Africa. And she came with them as refugee, and she said that to me too, because she's also Black or African American now, but she was refugee. Now she want to create or feel more like she belong here, so she would socialize herself with more with African American students to become African American and not refugee. Yeah. So as you say, and as we discussed, it depends on context, and race and refugee become even more complicated here, or even religious identities. Like you want to be accepted, but what if thing like that label or stigmatize to you? Maybe I should just being refugee, right? Or maybe I want to move away from that term and become this. Yeah, so she told me that she socialized more with African American students, and she learned more and more African American vernacular English to use to belong to African American community rather than being a Black refugee.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
No problem.
But I really have to go in 5 minutes.
Oh my God.
5-10 minutes. So I would like to ask if all three of you have any closing words, and then I can close, or yeah, maybe you three go first, and then I can close the event. Who would like to go first? Uwe, would you like to go first?
Sure. So thank you so much. It's been fun, and I'm sorry about the technical, and I didn't even know I got cut off. I was talking and talking and talking. But thank you so much for inviting me. It's been fun, and I appreciate that you share with me your research, and also all these helpful questions to think a little bit more about application to classrooms and to teachers. All right.
So thank you, Professor Dran. Thank you, Eduardo, for the invitation, and thank you, Carol, too, for being a partner for this presentation, for this discussion. It was a very good afternoon, and we learned a lot. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you guys, you who are watching. It is really important to me. Being here is really important because I am committed to education, and I think we are all committed to it. Thinking about how we can bring more light to refugee kids at school, and how we see other people from other nationalities. Thinking and discussing it is really important because of the time we are living here in our country that is totally crazy. Talking to you give us support to go through this time. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
I was mute, right? I just realized that. Sorry. I want to finish by saying thank you so very much to all three of you for the wonderful insights, for the wonderful conversation. I want to say that, when I looked at the time, I had promised all three of you that we would take an hour and a half. It was an hour and 45 already. And I was like, oh, wait, I have to go soon. So thank you all so much. It's very nice for us to have this opportunity to bring context together, to bring people from different contexts together, to bring knowledges from different places together. And for me, it's been a privilege to host this event. And I would like to say thank you so much, Uwe, right, for taking your time to be with us. It's very nice to see you again, right? I know we hadn't seen each other in a long time. Thank you so much, Carolini. It's very nice to see you again, too. It was really great to be with you again. And I know that our paths will still meet. And I say the same to you, Uwe, as well, right? But our paths still meet with Carol. She's so close here. And Mariana as well, thank you so much. Like I said before, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure seeing you grow as a researcher, you as well, Carol. It's been a pleasure following your work, Uwe. I've been following your work. You know that. I follow everybody's work who went to school with us, and I'm always reading your papers. And discussing some of the things that you guys bring to me as insights, even when we don't talk personally, but in reading your work. So I want to say thank you to all three of you very much, not only for the event, but for the wonderful work that you do in supporting these communities, in working with these communities at schools, at different contexts. And just to say that for me, it's a privilege to learn from you because, like I said, when Carol came to me, she said, okay, she was my advisee and she studied refugee populations. And I'm like, wait, but how can I be an advisor in that? I've never done anything related to refugee populations, but we learned with our advisees, and it was a great learning experience, as it has been this afternoon, as it has been learning from all of you always. I also want to thank very much Professor Clarissa Jordão again. She's right here, right? Because she was she was the support here, right? She supported me through the whole time, right? When I was trying to coordinate things. And it's so hard. It's my first time on StreamYard coordinating anything. So it was really hard. I've been a guest before, but not a coordinator. So it was really hard. So thank you so much, Clarissa. Your tech savviness saves us all the time, right? So thank you, right? And I want to thank the audience very much for being here. I know we had a technical difficulty at one point. Oops, sorry, Clarissa. I pressed the button by mistake. I know we had a technical difficulty at one point, but that's okay. And I really want to thank you guys for staying, for having stayed here, and for having been with us for those 2 hours. And just say that I hope we all get to talk soon again. And please stay safe. It's important. And I know Clarissa says that a lot. And I want to say, it's important that, we are here, and it's very nice that we're gathered, but it's important to acknowledge and to remember that these are not normal times, or at least the normal that we knew. And please, everybody, stay safe, stay well, and I hope to see you all again, virtually, physically, in any way we can, very, very soon, okay? Thank you all so much. We're going to end the broadcast. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.